Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here, and I have Mike Moe in the house. How are you doing, sir?
Good. Yourself?
Doing good, my man. Doing good. So we were jamming on here a little bit, and he knows Anthony. All y'all know Anthony's been on my podcast many a time. So I already know if he knows Anthony, we're good. And more importantly, Jake and Gino, guys. I got to tell you a fun story about the first Bigger Pockets episode I ever listened to was Gino and Jake's, all right?
Nice.
And I spent 20 years selling wine in high-end hotels and hospitality. My entire dream, my entire life was to own a restaurant. And because of that podcast, I lost that dream. 2 years later, I was in Nashville and I ran into Gino and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey man, I really appreciate you saving my soul and my money and not opening a restaurant and getting into real estate. So thank you so much."
Yeah, that's awesome. Sometimes the best advice somebody will give you is what not to do and what not to buy, right?
100%. So what I like to do with my guests is kind of start their story and share it where they want to, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess would be considered like a retail and corporate dropout, turned real estate investor, financial freedom advocate, really passionate about financial freedom and that whole side of the world. I shouldn't say dropout, maybe I should say graduate, since I kind of left that side of the world behind. But it kind of all started like 10 years ago. It was a little bit of a unique situation where my son was like 3 months old. My wife was my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, was at maternity leave with him. And I walked into my job and they basically said, you got 30 days to find a position in the company or you don't have one. We went through a company-wide reorg, and my position got eliminated, even though, I was absolutely crushing it. Took a team from bottom 1,000 to top 10 in the company, and it was crushing it in that area. But, somebody had a different opinion on what was valuable in that company. And, that decision wasn't mine. So super thankful for it, though, because it kind of sent me down what I'd call like the matrix moment, right? I found this whole world of financial independence and financial freedom, and just that there's another way of doing it, right? So I spent the next handful of years bumming around that and, doing more research and really just knew that I wanted more security and more opportunities, right? So I did a little bit on the Dave Ramsey train, did a little bit of stock investing, and then ultimately found real estate investing and just fell in love with it. So started researching kind of different avenues with that. Bought my first deal in 2018. I joined up with the Jake and Gino crew, like you had talked about, and kind of game changing there as well. Working with people who have done thousands of units and just kind of opening up your eyes to what is possible and kind of how to shape deals and how to look at deals, right? And then went about a 24 unit, 28 unit, 8 unit, and now 77 unit. And along those lines had left the corporate world because of, some of the passive income that was coming in. And here I am, I don't know, 10 years later after that matrix moment, if you will.
And do you have partners in those deals or are you running them yourself?
Yeah, so we've purchased them all sorts of ways, from 100% my own to joint venture on a couple of deals with a few other guys, and then syndications on the 28 and the 77. So raised capital on those and primary asset manager for those deals as well. So the day-to-day is obviously handled by the property manager, but the larger strategic vision, if you will, and kind of the guidance of the property manager is what I do on those properties.
And I think one of my things that I always talk about all the time, especially with young people, and you somewhat did that, but it seemed like you have a long-term vision on it. I think the biggest issue with real estate investing is so many people are trying to invest to get out of something, or they're investing to a home run instead of investing in something to enhance their life. And I think when you change the scenarios, it makes you look at deals maybe more long-term. It allows you to stack, like you said, 24 or 70, like you're not like, oh, we went and bought a 500 unit, we're figuring it out. Like that's probably going to come, but you're it sounds like to me that you're comfortable kind of letting the progression and go where it goes.
Yeah, for sure. And I can see why people think that, right? Or why they see the need to go after that home run right off the bat. Because I almost didn't invest in real estate because I was, I'm a big spreadsheet guy. So I was, doing the math and I'm like, okay, if I can get a couple $100 off this deal, well, I just saved for, 2 years to get this 55 grand to put into this deal and took a HELOC on my house. Right. So I'm like, all right, if I do this 2 or 3 times over the next couple of years, like it's still not going to move the needle much. So is it even worth doing? But what you can't put on a spreadsheet is, that first deal sets in motion a lot of other things, just the cash flow. Like obviously you learn a boatload during that first deal and you get sharper and you get different thoughts on how you can navigate. And then it just puts another chess piece on the board, right? So like, it's not a linear thing where you're going to buy one deal and you're going to save money and buy deal 2, but like you learn things, you meet people and you get smarter during those first 2 deals it's exponential growth. It's like a hockey stick, right? But a lot of people look at it and say, well, a couple $100 a door and I got to save up, 50, 60, 70 grand, whatever that is to do it. I'm never going to get there, but it doesn't work like that. It's not a linear progression with the growth. It does happen and a lot more exponentially.
No, 100%. I mean, I think, the first 3 deals I did, one got given away from a divorce, and then the other 2 were sold. And yeah, I bought them right, and they executed right, and the money is relative, but the act of having a thesis, executing on it, working through it, and then exiting that thing gave me the confidence to go buy businesses, to go do hotel deals, bigger deals. And so, yeah, on paper, you might not have that money anymore or whatever, but the confidence from executing from start to finish gives you the ability to go reach for that next one and so on, and become a value add, to be honest with you, and the team, whether it be syndication or with the partnership.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes you look at it a little bit more intentionally, right? When you go into real estate or a deal with a specific end in mind, right? Like that's a lot more prudent than just buying and hoping, right? And I think a lot of people, real estate's been really, really popular for the last 5-6 years for obvious reasons. And a lot of people go into it thinking that they're just going to buy and then it's kind of passive, right? But it's never passive, right? You've got to go in there with a plan. You've got to go into there some very strategic direction on what you're going to do with the property and how you're going to exit. Because regardless if you exit in 2 years or 10 years or 20 years, you're going to exit at some point in time, right? So you should plan that accordingly.
And what advice, so the guy that was in retail, corporate, all that stuff, what advice, as you sit here today and created and done what you've done, what advice would you give that guy for anybody sitting on the sidelines and thinking about it?
It's just to start, right? And to start before you have to. So like I started because 10 years ago, I was faced with a really shitty scenario, right? Like my son was 3 months old and like I was faced with a position where like I potentially didn't have a job and we were not in a good, we were like everybody else. We just bought a house that we could probably barely afford. We didn't have a ton in savings. We didn't have a ton of investments, right? So like I started because I kind of hit that and I had to, but most people don't hit that. Most people then will get to 55 or 65 and they realize they don't have the money that they want, or they don't want to do what they're doing anymore. And then it's almost too late, or they'll get to a position where it's 45 and they'll get phased out of their job or reorg or something like that. And they never started. Right. So like starting to build this opportunity or this optionality, I should say, with passive income and with investing is super important to do it before you even have to do it, because it just gives you options. It changes the power dynamics on really any situation, whether it be work. If somebody comes, your company changes your job description and you decide you don't want to do it anymore, or, a really good example is I was in the corporate world towards the end of that, we would do layoffs and reorgs every 9 to 10 months. And at the end of that, I was like, okay, like the stress is gone. Like if a reorg happens and I lose my job, it doesn't matter. Like I'm not going to be massively impacted. So it allows you to operate at a different level when you've got some of these basic necessities, like a small amount of income coming in from properties or other investment opportunities.
And what do you think that you had to unlearn yourself when you got into investing?
The biggest thing is just that it's a different game, right? So like most people don't think that this is a reality. They think that 65 and working for 30 to 40 years is like the only option, because that's the only thing you're taught, right? So really when you start looking at I think Mr. Money Mustache has probably got the most famous article on financial independence, where he breaks it down to, it's just math, right? The day that your passive income exceeds your expenses is the day you can retire. That doesn't mean, if you're 30, 40, or 50, it doesn't matter, right? So it's just changing that mindset. Like, it doesn't have to be an age, it doesn't have to be a number. And the other thing I would say is, like, it just gives you flexibility to not be concerned about certain things. And I don't think people realize, like, how important that is, to not have to worry about, like, finances on a day-to-day and month-to-month basis, when you can allow your mind to focus on other opportunities, like business opportunities, business ventures, passion projects, things like that, right? So I don't think you realize it until you have it. So really, it's just putting the time in to figure out, like, what you would do if you didn't have to go to work every day, and then putting some actions into putting that in place.
I've changed financial freedom, is such a buzzword these days. I've changed it to financial options. Right?
Yes.
Because I'm not stopping. Like, you don't understand. The only thing that's going to change for me is whether I work 4 days a week or 1 day a week. That's it. I'm still going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, my buddy that we do off market deals with, he sold his company for $30 million. He's got 4 businesses. He's a junkie. He loves it, but it makes him happy, right? And so he's doing things, giving back. We're doing impact things around addiction, other things like that. It's options, right? And I tell my clients all the time, the only word that matters in this world, and it's not hyperbole, it's more. Meaning, I want more time with my family, more love, more hope, more projects, more opportunities, more impact. Like, this idea that we're going to go on a beach and it's the boringest shit on the planet. I've done it. I have a mentor who has tried to retire 4 times. He said, every time I last about 3 weeks and I give up. We are what we are, right? Just enjoy it, right? And stop trying to run from it.
Yeah, that's 100% right. But if you think about it, like, most people, they don't even have the mental capacity or the time to think about what they would do if they had options, right? I really do think, like, if more people had that option to maybe not work solely for money and work for what they want to do, what they have a passion for, or just what interests them, like, we'd be all in a better place, right? So when you're looking at a spreadsheet and you make $5,000 a month and you spend $5,000 a month, and you're like trying to squeeze out more out of that budget, you're trying to figure out, like, make sure that you're going to have enough money at the end of the month. You've got no additional brain space to think about, like, what would those other opportunities, business ventures be? And when you can do that, it's like when I left my W-2, my corporate world, I'm I don't have a college degree, and I was making mid-6 figures. So I was like, I thought it was a good spot to be in, and, like, I'll never be able to go back to that. But when I left that, I 4x my income because I was able to do things that I enjoy more, and was way more passionate about. And I would never had that opportunity had I not had some of that passive income coming in, right?
Well, I call it stair-step thinking, right? And what I mean by that is, you're over here trying to say how you're going to get to 20,000 a month. But let's get to break even a month. Let's sit there. Let's talk about how we feel about it. Because I understand that each other 5,000, right? Like, and I'm just talking about myself. I knew when we started buying companies what I was committed to. It was 10 years of holy crap. And I had 6-month conversation with myself every morning when I walked. Is this what you really want? You got a 6-figure business coaching 1 day a week. This is your bigger thing. But this is the impact. This is going to be so much greater. But I had to make sure that I was comfortable in that. And guess what? When we get up to this level and we buy 4 companies, and I might have a different conversation about what my involvement is. Yeah. And so don't try to go all the way out there. Just create some targets you can hit at. And I try to tell people all the time, if you are sitting here and you're the best version of it, I try to tell people all the time, goals are just a past representation of how you view yourself. That's it, right? But sitting in the moment and saying, I'm available for the opportunity, who knows what can happen.
Yeah, and that stair stepping is so huge, because it does seem really daunting when it's like trying to tackle something as massive as financial independence, or as massive as buying, call it $100 or $200 or whatever your goal is, right? But like everybody talks about reverse engineering, like reverse it back to the most simple step that you can take and you can influence today, right? It's the stair stepping is huge, because if you're too frozen and if it's too intimidating, you're just never going to take any action.
And so, all of this talk about options and freedom, highlights what you're about to do, which I'm sure is what your corporate version of yourself never thought was possible. You're about to travel for the next 3 weeks. I mean, how amazing, do you, sometimes I'm just driving and I'm like, this is pretty cool. It's a fucking bear. And a lot of times I'm getting punched in the throat, but it is exciting to have the freedom to disappear. Do you ever think about, how great it is, and you're embarking on this 3 week business kind of family stuff? You get excited when you get to see that you get to have the freedom to do that stuff?
Yeah, totally. It's but in our corporate world, right? It's like you take a day off because you're sick or you're dying, and it's like you get chastised like left and right for it, right? So to be able to take, like I said, 3 weeks out of October off, and we never truly unplug, right? That's kind of the downside of being an entrepreneur, a business owner. But if we've got certain people and systems in place, we can get away for a good amount of time. And yeah, just super fortunate and super grateful to be able to do these next 3 weeks in different areas of life and different areas of the country. That would never have happened 4 or 5 years ago. It just wasn't even a reality, right? Because you can't blow those 2-3 weeks of PTO off all in 1 month, right? Because for the next 12 months, you don't have any days off.
My favorite fucking line of any fucking show is Office, and Pam goes, I really try to wait, to save my PTO up for the end of the year, and she goes, this year I made it to January 3rd.
Yeah.
and like, but to highlight this, we played in a charity golf tournament on Friday down in Pittsburgh, or Monday down in Pittsburgh. The guy that was partnered with us, I hear somebody yell out his name from there was 200 people there, right? Big charity thing. And he goes, what the fuck are you doing here? And they were talking, and he said, yeah, I got an out of office thing. And he came back, and I was like, what the fuck was that? He goes, that's my boss. He goes, my boss didn't know I was going to be here. And I was like, oh shit.
Oh no.
Oh God. He was like, screw this guy. He's like, this is ridiculous, And
yeah.
He goes, they know I play this every year, but it just cracked me up because it showed the disconnect in communication, right? That the boss didn't even know. And the biggest thing for me is I'm just a terrible employee. You know what I'm saying? If I don't have space, and it's so important, if I don't have space to think about my thinking, then I don't that's when I know I'm stuck. Is when I have no new business ideas. I'm not saying I'm going to act on them. Yeah. I always am you're always assessing. And when I don't have those, I go, oh, you need a little break. Yeah. It's too much work,
Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of, again, going back to optionality and going back to, the financial independence is you can take those breaks, right? When you don't have the option in the corporate world or whatever, W-2 grind that you're doing, you don't have the time or the options to step away and let things marinate and let things kind of sit with things for a little bit. It's just different, right? You get no chance to marinate on these bigger ideas and these bigger things that you want to do. But in our world, I'll block off time on a weekly basis, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, just to journal about ideas or business ventures or things that I need to put more time behind, right? And you just don't get that opportunity in the W-2 world.
So, if anybody's looking to start whatever it is, investing or changing their thing, what's some tactical, ground level stuff that they can do just to kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction?
Yeah, it's not going to be evolution, groundbreaking, new information, but it's just getting around people that have done it or who are doing bigger things, right? So I mentioned I joined Jake and Gino, and that was after I bought a duplex, and that's all I had. And I was sitting at a local meetup of ours in Minneapolis here, and I had told a couple of people that I had property, and by the end of that meeting, I had 5 or 6 people around me asking me questions about my duplex. I'm like, all right, shit, if I'm if I'm getting that much, if I'm the smartest person in this room with a fucking duplex, like I need to be in another room with other people, right? So I found Jake and Gino and got around people who were doing thousands of units, right? And that was, again, just from the mindset perspective of like shifting on how you think about deals, how you think of what is possible, kind of shifting your temperature of what's possible was huge. So getting around people who have done what you're doing or want to do is night and day. And even if you got to pay for it, right? You either got to pay to play, which can be good. There's some snake oil out there, right, with a lot of these gurus and whatnot. But if you vet them and find people who have actually done it, then you can find some really, really, really good mentors. So that, I mean, that program was 100 times over what I paid for it.
Yeah, and I think regardless, I've been in their group. I've been to some events because a lot of my friends either work for them or used to work for them. And I would say one of the things that I love most about their group is the connectivity to community, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of the things I heard somebody say is like, you're not paying to be listened to me talk. You're paying to meet the people in the group, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what people don't understand is that most of my business partners have either come from the podcast or masterminds or most of my big changes have happened. And for the last year and a half, 2 years, I haven't been in one because I'm just not in that light. I have 6 business partners and they keep me pretty, it's like our own little mastermind. So we're good, right? But I attribute my big ideas, my big shifts, all to those groups. It's so important. And even if you have a coach or don't have a coach or whatever, just get somebody that's in your corner that's going to support you and push you forward. And because whatever your goal, the number one thing I do with anybody I meet, doesn't matter if he's the fucking busboy, whatever your goal is, I'm going to double it.
Yeah.
Because whatever you think it is, it can be way more. You just don't know. Like I interviewed a guy today. He swims like English channels and shit. And he swam like 13 hours.
Jeez.
And he's like, oh, I was getting stung by sharks and fish. And he's like, I've got 5 more over the next 3 years. And I'm just like, what? Like, what the fuck? And you hear that, and I'm going to watch it. It's like, he has a documentary coming out, right? And I'm going to watch it, and I'm like, I know. It's like, did you watch Iron Cowboy?
No.
So this guy did 100 Ironmans in 100 days.
Good Lord.
I mean, you're like, what? And then before that, he did an Ironman, 50 of them in a different state every day. 50 days.
Oh yeah. I did see that. Yep.
Yeah, and you're just like, you watch that, you're like, huh, what? Like, and so when you watch stuff like that, or you get around people that do those things, I remember, same as you, I got around people that had 40, 30, 70 Airbnbs, 1,000 units, 12,000 units, and you're like, okay, great, this is amazing, right? And it just pushes you to think, okay. And I remember what it was. It was a Jake and Gino trip, and this guy had 300 units, and he bought a 1,350 unit portfolio. And they go, why did you do it? You only had 300 units. He goes, because I figured, whatever. And you're just like, and you just heard that answer in front of 60 people. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And you realize, like, in that day, I was like, okay, like, it's like, whatever, And so it really, those moments inspire you.
And you almost get both of it too. You get like the mindset and like the what's possible side of it, but you also get the real tactical, right? So like with Jake, and like this is not a nonstop plug for Jake and Gino, but they were very pivotal to my journey. But I had a one-on-one coach that I met with weekly who had 1,000+ units, right? So instead of like trying to fuck my way around Bigger Pockets and Google and try to figure out how this stuff was, it was a live one-on-one, like, okay, how are these typically structured? How are you, like, from a capital raise, like, how do you do this? How do syndication attorneys work? And then obviously when we put a deal on a contract, we actually brought somebody on our team who had done it too. So we get a little bit more of that, but like the one-on-one, like real tactical, here's best practices, here's what to think about. Did you think of this? Is just game changing versus trying to sift through.
It's like if somebody came to me now and they're like, hey, what would it be like if you got sued and talked to the FBI in the same week? I said, oh, I can tell you. It's like,
yeah.
but it's like now, like I wouldn't have known if you didn't get in the arena. So having those people in your life, it's like, dude, no, do this, don't do that. right? And it's like, man, talk about shave years off shit. I mean, there's only
Yeah,
so many books you can read, right? There's only so many
totally.
podcasts you can listen to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And there's so many people, and I was guilty of this for I don't know, a year or two, but like looking for the silver bullet in the next book, and thinking that the next book's gonna have the answer. But at the end of the day, like a lot of these are the same stuff, just regurgitated in different ways.
Mm-hmm,
Right? So you've got to take
mm-hmm.
action at some point in time, and you've got that person to help push you when they can call you on your bullshit and say, well, you probably know enough where you need to get your feet dirty or your hands dirty, so.
I love that. Mike, if people want to connect with you, they want to follow up, how would they do that?
Yeah, anyway. So Mike at Mike Moe, REIMikemoe REI on Instagram. Mike at superiorcapitalgp.com is my email, or text and call is always good too. 218-310-5947. Always happy to jump on a call with investors, or people that are just looking for financial freedom, or like we're looking for how to take the next step. It's sometimes it can be a little daunting. So always happy to chop it up with people like that.
I love it. Guys, if you got some value from this episode, send it to a friend, and we'll see you next time.